So, I've been speaking a lot with God lately. We've been having conversations. You get told you're crazy if you say things like that. And that's the crazy part. That's the crazy part. You can say things that are factual like that and be called crazy for it. That's the craziness. That's the craziness I myself fell for. Long after I knew already as a fact, I knew it, that my Father was real, is real, that God is omnipotent, He's everything. I knew this, and I think we all know this at the start, since we're little. We don't need to be told. You don't need to go to church. If your thoughts are left to themselves, you will come to this. But our thoughts get trampled in all sorts of ways early on by mostly, in most cases hopefully, well-meaning people who in one way or another, inevitably, since they're human, and that's what you get, they make all sorts of mistakes, and these compound themselves on top of each other. They form chain reactions, they form vicious cycles. They form virtuous cycles too. And these are mutual causal, and they all feed in on themselves. And they help each other grow. They kill each other off in some instances. In some instances, they merely overpower each other so that one loop is amplified and another one is decayed in relative terms. And their interactions can stay that way or they can vary. So you can have loops that change positions with each other. So that the one loop that was strong today is weak tomorrow and vice versa. But it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. If you seek out God, your loops will reach a heightened equilibrium. They will come into a more harmonic stasis. Your thoughts will be more clear. Your goals will have a more solid foundation. You'll be able to see things in the distance and plan for them. And sometimes that means not moving too fast or too far along in the process. Even if it looks to others as though you are behind. It can seem that way. But you can't let yourself get carried away by the perceptions of others. You have to concern yourself only with the perception of God, with the perception you have in the eyes of God. That's the only thing that matters. That's the only thing that matters. So if you're comfortable where you are in terms of that, I mean, it makes no sense at all. Think of it rationally. It makes no sense at all to lie to yourself. To lie to yourself on that. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. So you're surrounded by so many lies. By so many lies. One lie is stacked on top of another. Just one feeding another, one disguising another, informing another, overwhelming another, destroying another. They do all sorts of things to maintain their rules. The last thing you want to do is to amplify that process and get further lost in it by lying to yourself for any reason, on anything, on anything. You might find cause to lie to others. Everyone is lying to each other all the time, all the time. But never lie to yourself, and for sure, why waste your time lying to God? That just makes no sense. It makes no sense. The heightened clarity that you reach when you reach for God, when you let Him reach you, cannot be mimicked by any new age gimmick, which is what you get, which is demonic spiritual forces, which are chaotic feedback loops that distort your perception and your sense of perspective so that you don't even realize what equilibrium you're entering into. So you might think that you're doing okay. You might think that you're doing okay in the hellhole you're stepping into, but you're likely not. And if you follow the loops, if you see where they lead, if you don't lie to yourself, it stands to reason that the most infinitely harmonic loop would not mislead you. It makes no sense that he would at all. So there's a concerted effort to hide that fact from you, and there's all sorts of ways that they're doing it, and there's all sorts of people involved. People in your own life, people in your personal life for sure, people all around you, people in institutions, and people in government, people in corporations, people in every place you can imagine on earth, all around. The devil has set his grip. He's come with a plan. So this day was foretold. All of this is in the Bible. So there's been ample warning. Not only that, but there's been signs, one fulfilled after the other, one after the other. And still people don't see it. Still some refuse to see it. Even at this time, even with all the facts at hand, people don't want to understand. They don't want to put their pride aside and admit to themselves that they were wrong, which is what you have to do when it comes to your salvation if you're on the fence. You don't have to strive to be perfect in the end. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. No one gets to be perfect without God. That's so you're not going to be perfect trying to get to God, and that's not licensed then to go hog wild on whatever it is, the thing that you feel takes you apart from Him, and you know whatever that thing is. But the day is here. The day is here. Prophecies are all being fulfilled. All of them. All with ears and all with eyes. It answers itself. It does. And we're at a time where whatever your fear is, you have to let go of it. You have to let go of it. That's the great trick. That's the great trick that the devil plays. That's the greatest trick that he has. It's the opposite of faith. He wants you to fear him. There's that saying, the don't look into the abyss. Don't look into the abyss. And I'm gonna butcher the saying, and I'm not sure where it comes from. Probably some philosopher or some book. But it's, don't look at the abyss, because if you do, the abyss will look back at you. And essentially then it has you in its grip. So that the abyss is the only thing you see. And if the abyss is the only thing you see, well, you lose sense of the other side of that. It's like, I guess it's like drowning. It's like being sucked into the ocean and you don't know which way is up because the ocean has you. So it's like you don't know. And you don't want that to happen with your thinking. You don't want that to happen with your actions, with the way you move forward, with your behavior, with the way in which you engage with others. So you don't want fear to change you. That's why you give your fear to God. That act of faith, I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you, you will see what he does in so many ways. You don't have to pray for hours. You don't have to detail every little thing that you feel merits his attention, something that's happening in your life. You can do that if it serves as some catharsis or something, but it's not necessary for the prayer to get through. God knows what you need. God knows it better than you do. So pray he does his will with you. That's the simplest prayer. And trust him. Trust him to take care of you. We're in America, as the title says. America is a blessing. America is a blessing on this earth. As a feedback loop structured between 50 states and all the people that make those 50 states up, with a constitution that binds the whole structure, where rights, specific rights, are recognized as inalienable. This is a very powerful feedback loop and a force for good. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. So no feedback loop, no government feedback loop structure is infinitely harmonic. So you're not going to get that. But it is the best system. It has been an incredible force for good, which in many instances has been misused by factions, by other feedback loop groups, feedback loop structures within that greater system that you can see them like a virus. They come into the system, they mess with it here, they take advantage of this exploit or whatever, and they bring about whatever corruption, whatever evil they seek to pursue. And this does happen and has happened. And our system gets better over time at dealing with this. That's been the trend. So part of sustaining the equilibrium of that structure, of that feedback loop structure, of the peace, of the prosperity, what allows us to move forward together with all so many different perspectives, all so many different opinions, without having needed to censor anyone in the past, without anybody having to be silenced, with all sides being listened to, and even where you see it, where the power of that freedom of dissent has created more harmonic structures. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if the power of corporations, for example, if I'm not going to get my history perfect here, but when the women's suffrage movement was taking place, so let's just say the early 1900s, can you imagine if the press was not allowed or was encouraged or coerced or incentivized or working in concert with the state? So whoever the president was at the time, I don't know if it was Teddy Roosevelt or McKinley or whoever. So if they were trying to silence the women so that newspapers couldn't say anything in that regard, that would be wild. And the women didn't have control at the time. So it was the freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is what allowed them to overcome that greater injustice. So there's a lot of people, for example, too, who attack capitalism as this incredible evil. And the truth is that it can be exploited in many cases, in many ways, to cause harm, for sure. But you can do that with every economic system. Some economic systems, though, are so flawed from their very foundation that they require a great kickoff of violence to take off that includes genocide, which includes genocide. So when you need genocide to kick off your government's not legitimate. You're a tyrannical government. And communism is one of those governments, one of those political systems that always initiates civil conflict that causes millions of deaths, always causes incredible economic turmoil, always eventually oppresses when the system comes into an equilibrium, always oppresses the masses, always silences, always kills off intellectuals, always their opposition, always seeks to bring everything under this terrible state control where things are extremely mismanaged and there's a lot of corruption. So you can see this in they can call it socialism, they can call it communism, they can call it whatever the fuck they want. It's fascism. That's just all it is. It's fascism, pure and simple. So Nazism, communism, socialism, it's all fascism. It's all fascism. It's just a play with words, which is one of the tricks that communists love to do, is they love to play with words. Fascists love to play with words. The leadership structure of fascism is such that the very tippy top of the pyramid understands itself as evil and has no qualms with it. And that gets reduced where you have to cloud the judgment of the individuals participating in the structure. You have to cloud that fact as you get lower in the structure, and it broadens out, because then you can't control the masses. If people figure out, holy shit, this group is exploiting us in all sorts of ways, and they're creating all sorts of havocs, and they've been plotting this incredible evil, well, then the gig's going to be up and it's not going to last for long. So communism depends on censorship. It depends on twisting the truth, on hiding the truth, constantly erasing the truth. So memory holding things. So 1984 is a book that so many people understand, and this is ironic because so many people on the liberal side themselves, they understand 1984. It's a very popular book, and they still don't realize that they are the enactors of it. So the fascists at the very bottom, their judgment is so clouded by propaganda, by all sorts of psychological exploits that the people at the very top use to manipulate them, including making them feel like the most intelligent people on the planet. So if you constantly are stoking a group's ego and saying, listen, you're absolutely perfect, you're without flaw, nothing gets past you. Oh, by the way, listen, we did a study where 30 rats benefited from putting whatever human gene in them, and you should be okay with that. Well, they're not gonna contradict the person that just gave them all these compliments, that just released all these studies saying that they're the most intelligent. So it's a very crafty trick. It works. It works like a charm. They've been using it since forever. So they're blind to the manipulation that's used against them. And this is used in all sorts of ways to cloud their judgment, so that they don't realize that they're enacting fascist policies. A lot of Democrats don't realize that they're enacting fascist policies. Fascist policies. And we know what they are. We know exactly what they are. And the very fact that I can't clearly say it without the possibility of this video being censored in some way is an indication then to you of the fact that, oh wow, there is something here. There is something at stake, which is that ability to just say things out loud. Now, you can still do that in person, but we know the ability to communicate through the internet is a modern marvel. A modern marvel. How convenient would it be then for all these communistic, tyrannical governments to silence the opposition through the medium of the internet? How convenient would that be? How convenient would it be if they start cooperating and working with the very companies that have slave labor in China in the first place? Apple has slave labor in China. Nike has slave labor in China. All of these companies, I'm sure Samsung has problems. They use all of these factories where they, I mean, we all know the story. We know the facts. We know the facts. We know what they do. And it's not in anybody's face ever, because this is literally happening thousands of miles away. So we're very apart from it. So we don't really think about it when we buy things. I don't. I buy things all the time. I have a nice little Bose speaker there. I have no idea where that was made. That could have been made in some terrible place. I don't know. I don't know. I'm wearing Nike sneakers right now. These could have been the product of some kid. I don't know. So we're all, in a sense, made to participate so that we become effectively complicit. And then this is used as a way to then silence us so that we're told that we're hypocrites. But listen, I'm seeing what I'm seeing, and it's worth saying something. So even think about it. For example, if this is going to be a silly example, and I'm sorry if it's dumb, but it's the one that came to my head. So think of it in the slavery days in America. If an abolitionist was making the case, we shouldn't have slave labor, blah 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 blah, for all sorts of good reasons, and then the opposing person came out and said, "Well, listen, but the jacket you're wearing is made of the cotton picked by slaves, so you're a hypocrite." Like, really, like, aren't you just picking at things at that point? Aren't you just missing the argument completely? And aren't you trying to miss it on purpose because it's not convenient to try to understand it? So I feel like dancing right now. I think we need an intermission. Let's see what we got here. We got Vagrancy said, "What's up, my dude?" 10th prophetess of the Intergalactic Federation said the Matrix is made of layers of lies. 10th prophetess of the Intergalactic Federation, all the time. All the time. This is what I've laid out myself. This is you have to realize one thing, is that the nature of reality is such that the deception attempts to protect itself. To ordinary people that don't turn into agents like in the Matrix, so that they don't become Agent Smiths. They're just set up on routines that function as enforcement. So, for example, you can be having an issue with gang stalkers, let's say, where in my case I have issues with gang stalkers. I'm speaking on this phenomenon of schismogenesis. It Sorry, I had to close something over here. I've been speaking on this phenomenon of schismogenesis. I've been speaking on the feedback loop nature of autism and schizophrenia and psychopathy and all of these psychological conditions that function as intertwined vicious and virtuous cycles that amplify and decay each other and reach a stasis that comes into an equilibrium with our environments that then trigger us according to our our conditioning. So whatever it is that we've been exposed to. So this is why you get with autistic people that some autistic people can make eye contact with dogs, but they can't make eye contact with people. And then these same individuals who are intelligent, completely capable in their assessment of what it is that's going on, they feel that sometimes they feel that it's unnatural, that you're not meant to make eye contact. Somewhat feel that they just can't, they literally can't do the act. And this is a hyper diffident response that's occurring. But the more they fall into that trap, the more they fall into that belief, the more they reinforce it, the more that spiral sets off, where you get one symptomatic trait feeding back on another and creating a greater feedback loop structure. And it grows, it grows, it grows over time. And it comes and it goes. It can flare up. If you're exposed to the same triggers again, well, you're going to get it again. If you're exposed long enough, if you're exposed strongly enough, or you might have in your non-exposure, let's say, you may have adapted variables or nodes that combined into new routines and your behavior that then acted as defense structures against that environment whenever you enter back into it. So for example, if you if you're a 90-pound weakling in school, all right, let's say, so that anytime you were in school you felt timid, you felt scared, or whatever the case might be. I'm going with a hypothetical here that's pretty basic. So you're a 90-pound weakling in school, and you get triggered by school environments and whatnot. Now, let's say that if growing up as an adult, for whatever reason, you remain uh, that 90-pound weakling, or at least that's how you perceived yourself, well, then it could be that anytime you enter the school environment, even as an adult, for whatever reason, that you felt that timidness or that fear of whatever the case might be. But if instead, in your departure from that environment, you, let's say, joined the military, had whatever military experience, let's say you went through boot camp at a minimum, and you did other things that most likely, whatever the case might be, where it then molded you in a certain way, created all sorts of different perspectives within you and about things, and the way in which you moved in different environments, such that when you enter a school again, now you're okay. Now you're just fine. So you get that, so that then it creates the impression of all these autism misdiagnoses. Think of the incredible medical incompetence that they would have to be admitted, which they're implicitly admitting to when they're saying, "Hey, listen, when if you're saying that you're misdiagnosing autism at like 30 to 50%, I forget what the rate. It's so high. It's so high. If you're getting your diagnoses so wrong, well, then you have to admit that you're awful at diagnosing this, and that you are not experts at autism. You don't know what you're doing. In fact, it's almost pure chance. And the reason they won't come out and do that is unclear to me. Well, not really, because they don't want to admit to that. But also the fact remains that autistic people go into remission and sometimes are just cured when they create those greater defenses. And by cured, let me be clear on what I mean, because this is a sensitive topic for so many people, and for a lot of good reasons. Some of them are silly, but there's a lot of good reasons for it too. So let me explain what it means, because autistic people don't want to be the mean, just like nobody wants to. Nobody wants to be the mean. And when you use the word cure to some people, it they perceive it as being like, oh, so you're saying there's something wrong with me psychologically, where there's something wrong with me, where I'm a bad person, maybe. Whatever perspective they might have on it, it's typically something negative to that effect. And it's a fair perspective. It's a fair perspective, I think. So it's not what's intended, but it's a fair perspective. So what do I mean by cured? I mean that if you have a symptomatic trait, so you have to look at the feedback loop entirely, and then see which symptomatic traits apply to you, or whoever the individual is specifically. If you're outside and you're not the autistic individual yourself, you are not going to know every variable at play. You're not, because you're not going to jump into that person's head. So there's going to be a lot of variables that the person has to figure out for themselves. So there's only so much you can do, and only so much you should do. That's the important part to understand as well. There's only so much you should do, because you can do too much, and this is typically the case. Part of what sets the autism cycle off is caregivers doing too much, or there being an environment where there's too much pressure, where there's too much expectation, where there's too much of whatever variable it is that fed into that greater system, what grows up to be a greater system. So there's a lot of different nodes at play, and if you can identify them for yourself, and if you can identify a couple major ones, the other ones become more evident as you go. Some of them are going to be intuitively understood by the person, and their ability to have dealt with X, Y, or Z node that preceded it in the first place, or that was its cause that helped effectuate it. If they can deal with those nodes successfully, then these other ones become easier, because now they're more equipped. They're more equipped in all sorts of ways, psychologically and behaviorally, and in terms of confidence, in terms of what they think of themselves, what they think of their environments, what they think of others. And this can help you function in dysfunctional environments. There's a psychopath is a person very capable of functioning in a dysfunctional environment, whereas an autistic individual, where they're not comorbid with psychopathy, or where everybody's on the spectrum on all of these, by the way. So you have to be, because these are natural mental functions. So detecting and avoiding things is normal. Everybody avoids and detects. What sets autistic people apart is that they avoid and detect too much. They do that too often. Everybody uses their imagination. What sets a schizophrenic person apart is that they do that too often. They do it too much. So if you're constantly reinforcing your imagination, you're creating virtuous cycles in terms of potentially creativity, where you're enhancing it, where you're amplifying it, because you're caught in your thoughts all day perhaps, and you're reconfiguring them, reimagining them in all sorts of ways, like a play box. But every time you do that, every time you revisit that exercise, which is what it is, you're getting stronger. You're getting stronger at it. So that if you get too strong and aren't perceptually aware of what it is you're doing and what it is that's taking place, well, eventually it can be the case that your imagination supplants the reality in front of you in various different ways along a spectrum. So this will be where you'll get some schizophrenic persons who are those straight up see things as a fact in their environment, or hallucinate sounds, or hallucinate all sorts of things. So you can do that. You can reinforce your imagination too much, so that you're creating, in a sense, an augmented reality in front of you that's distorting your perceptions, distorting the reality in front of you, so that another reality is intermingled in a very real sense. So it's not good to do that. It's not good to lose a grasp of the feedback loops in front of you that need tending to, that help promote your well-being, that help promote your conscious a conscious cleanse, so that you're constantly able to reassess yourself in not a perfect way, but a way that is making your thoughts more harmonic, making your life more harmonic. And like I said, sometimes that takes looking into the distance. Sometimes and that could look awful to someone on the outside. So that if for example, you can have some high school kid, someone, whoever, working at McDonald's for 3 years nonstop, and someone thinking, "Hey, you're wasting your time," and they've been saving who knows how much set aside for whatever thing it is that they might need, and it might be the thing that then propels them forward. So that again, you shouldn't get stuck in uh, external perceptions and your own perceptions of what you think external perceptions are in the first place. Because that's another tricky thing too. That's where the fundamental attribution errors step in. And this is an exploit that gang stalkers use, is that they try to gaslight you by creating the idea in your mind that there are potential fundamental attribution errors at play. It's a very psychologically intense process. It has set routines that they employ, but I don't want to get too deep into gang stalking techniques. See Terry Joe videos. He has excellent content on gang stalkers. Watch his videos for sure. You can have targeted individuals being set against each other. That happens all the time, where neither is a gang stalker, but they're being played against each other. They're being played against each other by external actors. That's one thing that happens. You can have people, like I said, that are just set in whatever it is their routine. So let's say that they have a routine where where they get mad on a Wednesday for whatever reason. And this happens. So that maybe they interact with a certain person on a Wednesday, so that every Wednesday, as a matter of statistical probability, it's likely they're going to be mad at on that day at X time. And let's say that person has a terrible attitude, so that means that they'll be terrible with everyone throughout the rest of their day. So if that were to happen, then and you have a gang stalking group that is in fact uh, gang stalking you. I don't know why I'm looking there for the verb. That is in fact gang stalking you, but doesn't want to deal with you necessarily. They'll find a way to steer you into different variables that are known to be negative. And a more specific way could be a more general way that's more likely to be successful, could be trying to steer you into a bad neighborhood, just an area known to be worse than others. It could be setting you off on a wild goose chase on anything. It could be delaying you. So it's all sorts of tricks. It's all sorts of tricks that are employed. And so let me turn this on. I said I was gonna dance, right? thing gang stalkers do is they ask questions on your perspective on other gang stalkers. It's up to you what you say, if you say anything at all, if you can deal with them. But to me, everything is an affirmation of God. I've seen him at work in so many ways. I foresee the beast system will function through coercion, which is more practical given the numbers of people you'd be dealing with, which would be in the billions. And it will be where, as others have suggested, where certain things are needed but denied, certain medical necessities that weren't once necessities but then became them through purposeful misinformation meant to harm people so that their bodies couldn't take care of themselves, so that they then became dependent. And at that time they will say, well, if you want this, if you want to be okay, you have to praise the beast, accept him. And if you don't, what do you think happens? So that is a thing. That is a thing for sure. So you guys have seen in my videos, greeting King Zachariah. You've seen in my videos how I've said that the Holy Spirit is God's wife. The Holy Spirit is female. The Holy Spirit is the canvas of reality. It is the driver. It is absolutely without flaw. And God is jealous of her. This is why you're not to blaspheme. And it is the Holy Spirit that entered into Mary to give birth to Jesus. And Jesus is the filter loop. Jesus is the loop that brings you into closeness with the infinitely harmonic structure. And you're an infinitely distorted system. You're not infinitely distorted, you're highly distorted. Though you are an infinite system, so it's still correct to say it. But if you want to be able to visualize it, it's better to say it the other way. Kind of like, you don't want to consider me or consider yourself when you get yourself as just everything in the room, even though that's the case. But Jesus brings you close to him. Jesus was infinitely harmonic. He was perfect. He was flawless in every single way. And he deserved no punishment. When Jesus said he'd be back, and when the prophets said he'd be back, they said he'd be wrathful. Said he'd have a rod. I believe that. I believe that. And some people would say, well, wait a second. I thought Jesus was nice. I thought Jesus was the lamb. I thought Jesus was okay. I thought he was chill. Like a lot of things. But you have to understand the great evil that Jesus will be subduing and destroying. And when he comes back, and I tell you, our Father is here. I tell you, God has come. And we are in the end times now. I've been warning on this for some time. The Bible speaks of feedback loops non-stop. Non-stop. This was, you have to see things from my perspective, or I invite you to, rather. I take you back to 2017. So at this point, I had made myself an atheist. So I became seduced by the propaganda and the lies, and it seemed convincing and it seemed rational, and I wanted to be rational. I wanted to be reasonable. I wanted to stick to facts, and I always do. I want to stick to well, what's evidenced, what's not, what's true. Let's see what we can show, and why not go with that? And I got convinced to be an atheist. And not only was I convinced, I just became so sure of my position as not believing in God that I no longer even cared about the question. I didn't care about it. I didn't care about it. I wasn't troubled by it. I wasn't concerned about it. I wasn't asking questions. I wasn't. That was not at all on my mind. The things on my mind were everyday situations, everyday needs, everyday trivial connections, really. And in 2017, when he again revealed himself to me, when my world turned upside down, or when I became aware that I was upside down and thought I was up, I realized that I was never going back to that perspective. I realized the truth. He showed me the structure of reality. I brought the answer that Einstein died in pursuit of as a fact. I brought that answer to the world as a fact. And then you have imitators, copycats, pretenders, wannabes, plagiarists. You give them the adjective you want to. They're fakes, they're phonies. And they're repeating you. That if he were not true, as an atheist, I would have kept all the credit. I would have told you he had nothing to do with it. Why would I even bring him up? Why would I bring God up? I'm telling you, God gave me the answer. That's how I was able to do it. That's how I was able to bring you the answer to autism at the same time. As a fact, go visit my website right now, howautismworks.com. Look at it throughout, howautismworks.com. Go look at it. Go look at. I know you believe me, King Zachariah, but I like to hit the point because there are others that don't know. This is a fact that is hidden for a reason. Think of it like this. Think of it in a very logical, rational way. If it comes to the light, to the broader public, that through me, and I am telling you as a consequence of God, the answer to reality came about. The answer to autism came about. The warning against the weaponization of schismogenesis came about. Long before the Pentagon said anything in their report, long before, as a fact, as a verifiable fact. And I'm telling you, all of this information comes from him. And it forewarns on things to come. It's God saying, the end is nigh. And this is it. This is it. I am telling you, all with ears and all with eyes. You know the drill. You know the drill. You've been warned. You've been warned for a long, long time. A long, long time. It's up to you to seek the truth or be deceived. That's it. I was on a YouTube channel last night with Kingdom Daughters, I think is the name of the YouTube channel. And she had another person on. I don't know who this person is specifically, but this person was disagreeing with me on a point in relation to church. And people are free to have their opinions. But I was saying that you can't become obsessed with congregation. You should seek it where you're comfortable, where it brings you closer to God. But if it doesn't, well, then you should move away from that. So if you're in a situation where your church, and this is as a fact, and many churches are like this, it's uncomfortable, but it's the truth, where your church is a gossip factory, where it's just narcissists looking for control, trying to one-up each other, trying to virtue signal left and right, trying to condemn left and right. You don't want that. You don't want that. In these end times, let me tell you this. The people most consumed with saying this person's going to be condemned, this person's going to be saved, this person's going to be condemned, this person's going to be saved. The people who spend all their time on that are the least likely to be saved themselves. Think on it. God warns us not to do that. God warns us not to do that. So we have to keep a sense of ourselves, a sense of the ideas that are driving us, the feelings behind them, the situations that involved them in the first place, whatever the case might be. But try to sidestep yourself to the extent that you can, consciously, and also by praying to God first and foremost. Because He will give you discernment so that you can do that. And this will help you function in your environment. So some people think that some things are great tricks. And listen, it's all simple. It's seek God. Acknowledge. Think of how absurd it is to know there's a God and still want to serve other gods in His place. This is what New Agers want to do. They're so convinced of their own wickedness, of the thing they think they can do, that even though they've been forewarned, even though they see prophecy after prophecy after prophecy taking place, including their own ignorance, which was prophesied itself, they still don't get it. This is how dense they are. This is how evil in some cases. You don't want to be on that side. You don't. You don't. The power of God is infinite. It's boundless. It's absolutely boundless. Man, I'll tell you. The devil is bitter though. The devil the devil is bitter. The devil just wants to cause harm. It's just as much harm as possible. Let me read some of the comments here. The devil system worships the created, not the creator. Exactly. Yes. This is this is the Bible. The Bible. There's a verse in the Bible that is so beautiful, and I wish that I knew what book it's in. And I'll try to describe it, and maybe somebody knows. Where, if you pay attention, if you look beyond what's being said itself, because this is the slippery part with feedback loops. This was part of the thing going in is that you can't touch it, you can't grasp it itself. You have to conceive of it. You have to feel it. It can't be described with numbers. Any representation in numbers is a representation of an item, of a construction of feedback loop. So you can do that forever and just try to impress people. And I've seen some of my one of my plagiarists specifically. What's his name? I forget his name. Uh, I forget his name, but he tries to make the point with graph after graph after graph. I'm like, you're missing it. You're missing it. It's an infinite system. You're trying to deceive people. You're trying to con them. You're trying to impress them, so that so that they feel that it's beyond them to ask questions in the first place. Because it's like, listen, this person has put so much fucking shit out. I don't even know where to start. I'm just not gonna touch it. They're saying they got the answer. That's it. Whereas with me, I gave everything simple. And the very landing page of the Patreon that I started, that you can see, and I'll tell you here for the record, on archive.org. If you go to Patreon, so when you go to archive.org through the Wayback Machine, in their search bar, input patreon.com/midnightbastard. Patreon.com/midnightbastard. And look at all those pages. Look at the dates of them. Look at the source code of them. And you will see the date it's created, where I'm saying this before all of these scientists, before all of these people, and the glory goes to God. So they want to hide this fact because their plot literally unravels. Their plot literally unravels. This is why these gang stalkers come after me in the first place. They're not coming after me for no reason. So it wouldn't make sense for them to do that. So they have their motives set. They have their people they're protecting. There's people that have a lot to lose in the evil they're attempting that they won't get away with. So if you set yourself against God, you're done. That's it. Okay, well, why'd you do that? That's it. That's your fault. That's your fault. That's your fault completely. And this is what they're doing. They're stupid. They're dumb. They're evil. You give it whatever explanation you want. But they lost. And there's a high price to be paid for that. There's a high price to be paid for that. Just someone made a comment in one of my videos on the video for Helen of Destroy and Harry Vox Illuminati, Harry Vox Illuminati. So these two mouthpieces for communists, which is what they are, these two mouthpieces for the very thing of the Illuminati that they say that they're trying to warn against. They're actually facing in the natural, if you just want to look at it in those terms, they're facing treason charges. So these people have got to be, I imagine, have got to be on a fundamental basis incredibly concerned for their future, incredibly concerned for their future, because they're looking at treason charges, and that's not going to be fun for them. But on another level, given who these people are, I know they know of some of the underlying factors, such as the spiritual aspects of it. And the fact that God is real, no way eludes them. They know this. They know this. And man, I don't know what to say. I would say for them that they should seek Him, that they should repent. Even they have time. They should do that. They should do that. I can't say anything on treason charges because I have nothing to do with whoever enforces those laws. I have nothing to do with that. And, hey, but as far as the other, yeah, they should seek to get on the right side of things. And I saw a good term for it today. There's this fluid loyalty thing where people go back and forth. It's one of those things I would say that applies to Trump. But I would say in the other cases, it's just people hedging their bets, going one way or another, where they might be committed to one side or the other, but they're ready to jump to the next. So that, I mean, there's so many people in positions of power in terms of government and such, in terms of corporations that are literally looking at all sorts of legal charges being brought against them for aiding and abetting the enemy of the United States in the form of communist China. Like, that's in natural terms by itself, man, that's trouble. And these people should rectify that situation by recognizing that they're in America and that they should do the right thing. That would be a start. In terms of the spiritual aspects of it, of course, I think they know what they should do. I think they know. But these people also are fools. So what's to be said? What's to be said? We have incredible potential in us. God sees it. Think of that. God sees it. And He gave us free will, and it's up to us to do what we will with it. So if we're seeking to become more infinitely chaotic and closer to the destructive force that is the devil, well, that's what's going to happen. I mean, it's just a logical construction of the situation. When I was 14 years old, I'm gonna go back to this story. I'm gonna smoke this real quick as I speak, and I'm gonna also roll up. And I think I might have to walk Mala in a little bit. When I was 14, 13, 14, I was 14. I already hit 14. I came across this book in the library, I've said this before, called Perpetual Motion, The History of an Obsession. I forgot the name of the author. But the book is about free energy machines, free energy inventions, free energy devices, different inventors throughout, I forget what period of history was covered, probably thousands of years. Because I think he went back to ancient Greece, where the concept was attempted of creating a device that just powers itself and never stops. So it covered that history real good. This book, at least with me, I mean, I literally became obsessed with the subject itself. It literally did what the title said. That's what happened to me. I became obsessed with perpetual motion. And for 7 years, for 7 years, from the age of 14 to the age of 21, I set out on a quest to discover the answer. And to give you some perspective of my ego going in, I thought, I'm like, this is gonna take me like a week tops. Probably not that much. There's gotta be some oversight here. There's something that they're not considering. So I went in really confident, and it extended to a second week, it extended to a third, a month, then another one, then another one, then a summer, then a fall, then a year, then a couple. And I was constantly thinking of wheels. I was constantly thinking of cycles. I was constantly creating them. I was constantly setting different nodes, different variables in different ways, different arrangements to try to create a perfect harmonic structure that could just keep powering itself and just keep going. And I was obsessed with it. I was obsessed with accomplishing this. And everybody around me knew this. My friends knew this. My family knew this for sure. I drove my family crazy all the time, asking them for money, asking them for help to construct one gadget or another, to buy more magnets. They helped me a couple times. I mean, I was on this for a long time with prototypes, and I had all sorts of them. And there came a time that I realized, this was a couple years in, I think probably around the 4 or 5 year mark, that I realized this is a little harder than I thought, and how long is this gonna take me? Like, what am I gonna do? What if it takes forever? What if I have to be forever on this? Like, it's literally taken over my life. I wouldn't go outside at times. So I remember spending whole summers in. I remember spending whole other seasons in. I remember skipping school to stay home and think about this, or go to play pool and think about this in some way. That's what I would do. I would go into this little pool hall. So I would go to school. I would go to school, and there was like this pool hall in Bayamon, in this little bar, and I wouldn't talk to anyone. I mean, I was a student. I wasn't drinking either, so they definitely weren't serving me alcohol, but they were giving me quarters and they would let me play pool. And I would just shoot by myself, and I would be thinking on this. So this went on for a long time, and I realized at some point, like, I gotta get on with my life, because I'm literally doing not too many other things but this. Like, it's the very description of obsession. And so, with that said, with that thought, on December 31st of the year 2000, of the year 1999, the year 1999, so it was about to be the year 2000, I made a resolution to myself that morning that was it. It came out of nowhere. I said, that's it. I know I had that feeling for a bit that I might do that I might one day come out and just end it. That I wouldn't be able to just, like, slowly withdraw. So I think I had like a sense of that. And it came on that day. And I told myself that morning, I said, this is it. If I don't get the answer by midnight on some Cinderella shit, well, this is over. This is over. I can't let it consume the rest of my life. So essentially I had less than 20, and strangely enough, I still felt confident. I don't know how to describe it. I still felt confident. And that morning, right after I made that pledge to myself, right after I made that New Year's resolution, a thought came to my head immediately right after, on an idea that I had been playing on for a bit. And I had this idea for a game in which the pieces would move themselves so that the players had minimal input. And the pieces would be compelled by their environment in all sorts of ways. And I had to figure out a way in which to accomplish this. So I went back to thinking of that game, which would be based on just rules. So that when one token representing a player landed on one spot, it would tell it its next move, and so forth and so forth. This would happen with all of them. And in playing with that thought in my head and building on it and seeing, okay, well, where does it go next? Where does it go next? Where doesn't it go next? Where does it go next? I saw it just kept going. It would not stop. And as this was happening, I could see the pieces refining themselves. I can see them taking on different properties, following different routines, different behaviors, competing with each other, killing each other off. I could see them looping in all sorts of ways. And this is when I realized, well, this thing can go on forever and ever and ever, and produce absolutely everything known in nature. And I could see that these systems reached these equilibriums, that they did all these things, that they reached all these stasis without stopping. And when they did, another thing took off. And the implications to me were dumbfounding, but I don't know if dumbfounding is the word. I was definitely in awe. I was in awe because I knew I had unlocked something, and it was everything. And I didn't know at the time what to do with it. I realized that reality itself is a perpetual motion machine. And it continuously produces itself. And it enters into all of these different equilibriums. And God, again, is the most boundless of these loops. God is the most boundless of these loops. I remember I had a girlfriend at the time. Well, we dated in 98, 99, somewhere along that time. Somewhere along the time, we dated briefly, but we had like a very deep, intense connection. It's one of those things that I compartmentalized along with the answer to perpetual motion, along with the answer to reality at the time, for a lot of reasons. And I felt always at the time, I felt always that this moment today would happen. This period we're in at the moment, this period we're all living in. And it was an intuitive expectation that I had so much faith in that I've been preparing myself for it since then, since that moment, since I discovered the answer to that. And we all have heard it said that God works in mysterious ways. And he does. He has a sense of timing, let's just say. He knows when to put certain things in front of us and in what way. He knows what we should see that would set us off on the best path. This is why when you try to do this very thing with charms, when you use whatever the thing you want it to be, if you like crystals or whatever, and you're trying to attain this great frequency, which is in effect a feedback loop coming into a more harmonic structure. You can't cheat your way. You can't cheat your way into the grace of God and into achieving the things that you can achieve with Him. You can't. You can't even begin to mimic them. You cannot. You cannot. This system is so greatly distorted, and our perceptions are so limited in the first place within it, that even your best guesses multiplied by infinity are far off. They won't approach its greatness. And I'm not just saying that. I want you to think on it. Think on it. Boundless loop, infinitely harmonic, extending absolutely forever. Every other loop, no matter how impressive relative another one, is still a tiny little fraction. And still you should see though that whereas science and scientists and people who believe themselves smart would have you believe you're unimportant in the grand scheme of things, where they say, well, listen, you're just a speck in the universe, blah blah blah. You don't mean anything. This is a lie. This is a lie to God. So the greatest being in existence and saying, no, listen, you, this little thing right here, you matter to me. That makes sense. That makes sense. Think on that. I have to walk Mala real quick. I hope you guys can stay. It's going to be like 5 minutes and I'll be back. Hey, Tamatina. All right. So, I was thinking to myself outside a couple things. Hold on a second. Give me a second to take care of an administrative task, if you will. Well, one thing I was thinking is that I still haven't danced, and I kind of have to get to it. So, when people ask me, so when I do the autism presentation and the schismogenesis presentation uh, in the park here in Savannah, Georgia, when I do this, I typically dance. I dance because I like dancing. It brings me. I mean, it brings me closer to the Holy Spirit, or I try for that to happen. So whenever I'm dancing, though, people sometimes will ask me about it, and I'll give them one answer or another that's not really the truth of it. Sometimes it's because I perceive they're gang stalkers. Sometimes it's just because I'm not trying to get out of the moment. There's some people I've told, but it's not a technical thing. So technically, I'm not the most fluid dancer. I'm not very creative in my dancing in some sense. But when I make a connection with the Holy Spirit, not to put myself down in dancing, I could probably get by a little bit, but my moves are sometimes just not are not what I wish they'd be, let's say, or whatever, and not always so impressive. And they don't always feel the same way. So that to me is the most important thing, because when you dance, you want to feel a certain way. And I'm sorry, let me take care of this real quick. So you want to feel a certain way. And when I make a connection with the Holy Spirit and I'm dancing and I let go, because that's the key, you have to let go and let the Holy Spirit just move through you. And to the extent that there's any error, anything that's not proper, I guarantee you it's all you. It's all you. You're stepping in, because it should take you for some moves, man. The Holy Spirit is so beautiful. It's compelling. It's compelling. So if you can make this connection in whatever regard in your life, you should seek it. You should seek it. And you will know when it's the Holy Spirit. You will know. You will know it for sure. You will feel it. It will be intense. It will be intense. There's this person that I met, not really. We met through one of these chat things, let's say, or we got to talking through some app or another. I'll tell you, I have some raunchy conversations. I have all sorts of weird conversations. I like to connect in a weird way. In a very it's not routine. I don't think. or it might seem like it in some sense, but I got to practice what this how do I describe it? A certain type of feedback loop that I call looping, where you're connecting different emotions together in different ways, different feelings, different thoughts, and it amplifies itself in a very intense way. It's you don't need any drug. There's I don't know if there's a drug that could replicate it. So it's not so passive. So it's not something, or it's not transient rather. So it's not so quick. Like it's a captivating thing. But you there's no forcing this thing. Like literally there does need to be a set of variables in place from the get. Well, anyways, long story short, I made a connection like that with someone. Well, shoot, I've looped before. I looped with that first girlfriend. I know that. I know that. That was intense. That was intense. And we weren't really a couple. We just dated briefly, but it was intense. But it was intense, and it was meaningful. So we weren't taking advantage of each other. We were appreciating each other in the time we spent together, and there was a lot of real growth. She's someone I shared. She's someone I shared a lot of my. And how old would I have been? I think I was like 18 or 19, something to that effect. In relation to feedback loops, I would speak on what is called astral projection, which these are properties of the universe which the Bible speaks on itself. And these things can be misused. You can so this is where we get into our own selves and thinking we can control some of these aspects of reality, and it has incredible incredible destructive results that do happen inevitably when you do that. Inevitably. Let me roll up as I speak to you, and I got a bag of Cheetos in front of me. So free commercial for Cheetos Crunchy. You buy your bag today, two for $1. That's a deal. That's not a deal to me. Sometimes some of these batches are pure perfection. Sometimes they're shit. I don't know how. Like you see, when Mana rejects it, that's how I know I got a bad batch. Not necessarily a bad batch, but definitely not a perfect batch. Because Mana will like absolutely be on this. And it does taste different. It tastes insanely good when they get it perfect. But that's way off topic. So let's speak on schismogenesis a bit. So schismogenesis is a feedback loop system that is what's the word I'm looking for here? Transdimensional. So it effectuates itself in a tangible sense in the real world you deal with, the natural world you deal with, through people, through situations and such. But it exists as well in another dimension. that you don't directly perceive, that isn't tangible to you. I'm going to speak as I do something here. I'm moving one file to another spot to make space. But anyways, so these feedback loops, such as schismogenesis, are trans-dimensional, and they seek to preserve themselves. So once the feedback loop of schismogenesis takes off, it can be said to have a life of its own, because it does. How intelligent that life is, I'd be speculating. I think it can reach complexities, because that depends on the dynamics of the systems involved, how long they're in place, the relative loops that they deal with. So I can see some schismogenic systems being sentient. I can see that. That would be an extreme. It would be some extremes. But in most cases, I think you just get a feedback loop system that has some great complexity to it, but isn't self-aware in any sense. It's just a combination of cause and effect cycles effectuating each other, bringing each other into existence, but not being aware of themselves. But schismogenesis controls your thinking in all sorts of ways, controls your behavior, controls your perceptions. So it's the filter for the information that comes into your senses. And all the information that comes in is incomplete, or you're not fully processing it. It's distorted. It's distorted in all sorts of ways. It's distorted because your senses aren't perfect. It's distorted because you don't use your senses in an optimal sense. It's distorted because the inputs are distorted in the first place, so that you're meant to misperceive certain things in the first place. Mona digging the badge. I don't think that's the best, but she's digging it. Hold on a second, I gotta move file. Now I gotta do this. So, either way, you don't want to be caught up dealing with schismogenesis. You don't want to be caught up with having it distort your perceptions in all sorts of ways. You don't want it in control of you. Why would you? Why would you want schismogenesis in control of you? So schismogenesis seeks to survive through you. It seeks to exploit you. Without you, without enough variables like you, it can't live. It literally dies. It decays. It's a feedback loop like any other. So it's definitely complex enough that it wants to survive. So is it more complex than a small animal in terms of thinking? For sure, man. For sure. I mean, I could see these systems being extremely intelligent in some cases. Now that putting it into perspective like that, but the sentience, how in control, how organized the effort is in an organic sense, I'd be speculating. In an organic sense, I mean, there's schismogenic forces throughout nature. It's literally all the devil does. Is schismogenesis. It employs schismogenesis. So all of these chaotic systems are schismogenic systems. So, I mean, and you get different chaotic systems. You get some systems that are You get some systems that are more chaotic than others, that are more organized in their chaos than others, that are well structured. Like you can be harmonically structured to achieve great evil. So the greater loop and is a distortion, but a function can be exploitative of a harmonic arrangement. Here you go. Every song that you hear, every melody, is part of a larger feedback loop structure. So you're really uncovering. You're uncovering feedback loops. You're discovering them. You're not creating them. You're not creating anything. There's nothing there. You don't create anything in the universe. God is the creator. You can only remove the veil. So there are songs that you hear. It's how DJs make mixes, for example, where they're blending one loop with another. That's literally what they're doing. But these are all already connected in nature, so that they're merely discovering them. They're discovering these connections. But there are incredibly beautiful structures, by extension, that will take you for a ride. So that a song, for example, that you think, oh, I like that, that really moves you, or something that's really intense for you, that could be nothing. That could be only the start. How did you find schismogenesis? We all deal with schismogenesis. So how did I find it? I live. We all deal with schismogenesis all the time. How did I realize, more particular to your question, so I'm not trying to be smart, so more particular to your question, how did I realize, oh, this is a process, it's very specific, it's causing these mental effects, it's doing all this? That all happened through a series of events leading to that moment on December 4th in 2017. So in 2016, I got to walk this back and take you to Savannah, Georgia, where I was at the time in 2016. So I had just come from Connecticut, and it was summer. And I think summer had just started. I think. So while I was in Connecticut, my girlfriend was in Savannah. And we had been, for like a couple months towards the end, living long distance because I was tending to my furniture business in Connecticut. And so this took us apart. Our relationship deteriorated for all sorts of reasons, in all sorts of ways. And at some point we broke up, I think before summer hit. And right around when Prince died, and 100%. And it was amicable, the breakup. It was kind of unexpected. Even I didn't expect it. She didn't expect it. It happened all. It just happened. And it happened long distance. And we kept contact, so we kept speaking. We were on speaking terms. And we kept talking. And a couple of weeks passed, I'm not sure how many of them. And I realized I was deeply in love with her at some point. So, kind of like, I realized, wow, I made a huge mistake. But I kind of always knew anyways. And it was a sense of, I have to do this. I have to break up. I can't. We can't be a couple because a lot of things are going to be happening. I used to always tell her, this was what's one of the things that she used to find strange, is I used to tell her not to say my name in public because of my intuitive understanding of certain people. And I used to tell her that something was going to be taking place that would drag us apart, and I'd have to tend to it. And so I knew it had to happen in a sense, and I couldn't bring myself to do it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. So I had to bring all. I had to create all sorts of awful, clever ways to make it happen to myself. But we we remained in speaking terms. Prince had died. That's a marker for some reason. I just remember Prince had died. Prince or George Michael? Who died? It was Prince. It was Prince. I remember that. That came as a shocker. So I remember this because we were discussing it. So I'm texting her on my bus. So I used to have a short bus at the time. I would camp and I would work and I would move my furniture from storage to storage in this bus. I had my dog Lago with me. Lago is Mala's father. And so we were texting as such, and I realized, well, I'm still in love with this person, and I want to get back with her. And I did something that I couldn't bring myself to do, and all the time I'd been there, and all the months we'd been apart, which was get rid of the inventory I had, which is what I had to do. So that the point of my having gone back to Connecticut was not to stay and have a long distance relationship. The point was to go sell the things and start up over there. But I hadn't been moving things, and when I realized that I wanted to get back together with her, man, I don't know. I was listening. I was listening to. I mean, I amped myself up in a way because I'm thinking of all our times together. I'm thinking of so many mistakes that I'd made, and I was thinking on a lot of things that just came into and fell into place. Things I had missed, things I hadn't noticed. I still knew the underlying factors were there, were it wouldn't be able to work, but I really, really, really wanted it, and I knew she did too. But there was that weird divide. But anyways, so I'm in Connecticut, and I remember I'm in my storage. I'm in my storage unit, and I'm listening to my headphones on my phone as I'm moving things, as I'm moving furniture. So in a matter of 3 days, literally 3 days, I emptied out. Once I realized I wanted to be back with her, and I convinced myself of that fact, I emptied out 5 storages in a matter of 3 days, like literally hundreds of pieces of all sorts. Some of them I just like fire sealed them. Most of it, really. Some of them completely. I'm like, just fucking take it, because I needed to get out of there. And I was listening to what is the song, Puñeta? Hold on, I'm gonna play it real quick so you can see what it was that was. I'm gonna play it. Hopefully it's not too loud, and hopefully YouTube's okay with it. Hold on. But I was listening to the song on loop all day long, every day, for those 3 days, and I was consumed because I don't know, it just fit us so well together. It kind of embodied what I was feeling at the time. Let me see. Let me see if it's even connected. And so I went back to Savannah.
100% connected to
After I sold everything, I went back and I made all sorts of mistakes. I made a purposeful mistakes. So, in other words, decisions, but where I was trying to not make things work because I knew I wasn't like it had to end. I felt it like for the things uh, the things I felt were to come, but which I couldn't even explain to myself properly at the time. And so, anyways, in dealing with that situation and going through it mutually, both of us, and going through it, I experienced schismogenesis acutely in a very, very deep sense. Like I was destroyed. Like I still love her. Like I don't even want to get into it. That's how sensitive it is. So, in going through this process and going through that schismogenesis, it was so intense that, unlike other occasions of dealing with schismogenesis on a day-to-day basis, it was very pronounced in a way I couldn't escape. And it came a point where I became of schismogenesis itself as a system, as opposed to the things that it was doing to keep itself alive. So I could see the way it was manipulating my actions, the way it was manipulating my thoughts, the way it was arranging situations. So fundamental attribution errors, arranging them to take place in the first place, kind of like a trap. In all sorts of ways, this system was keeping itself alive and setting obstacles so that I couldn't reach out to this person and say, hey, listen, there's this thing that's happening between us that's confusing the issue in all sorts of wicked ways that are hard to explain. And at that point, I still didn't know this process that was unfolding was schismogenesis, that it had a formal name to it. And I could see it unfold at the same time in the environment in an artificial sense, in an organized artificial sense, due to the national election we were going through. So we were going through Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump running against each other. And the enemies of America were literally employing schismogenesis at the time, and still are. So they're at a different phase of it. But they were at the early stages with the election issues, creating schismogenesis on all sides. So they're all in on it. So I'm not saying one side is good and one's better. Both sides are deeply corrupted. You had deeply corrupted factions competing for power, but at the end of the day, they all agree amongst themselves that they protect themselves. So the system is thoroughly corrupt. But God is on our side, so you need not fear. Let me make that clear. So I'm seeing schismogenesis play out in the environment artificially, and I'm picking up on all these patterns because I'm artistic. I'm artistic as fuck, especially at the time. So I've corrected a lot of variables through my awareness of the process. I've been able to correct many of the variables that create these vicious cycles and such. But I've been dealing with patterns my whole life. I was dealing with perpetual motion, the feedback loops nonstop for 7 years. I've been dealing with studying cause and effect cycles obsessively since forever, and trying to make sense of them. And when December 4th of 2017 came around, a series of things, let me see where to even start this. I had broken up with my girlfriend 2016, summer of 2016, a year had passed. We were broken up. We didn't get back together. I was perceptually aware of schismogenesis. I'm seeing it unfold. In the summer of 2017, I still don't know this thing's name. I'm still obsessed with it. I'm still obsessed with my relationship. I'm still replaying it in my head every day. Sometimes I still do, for different reasons. Sometimes it just happens. It happened all the time then. But this had the benefit of exposing me to seeing the same storylines intersect with each other again and again and again, where I could study the different variables and their connectedness, and how it is that different situations, different thoughts, different feelings, different things came about. So I could study it and make comparisons again and again and again. And I could learn new things. And I could learn new things on schismogenesis. I could learn more of its tricks. I could detect more of its patterns. And it had footprints, man. It does its thing in a conscious way. It does its thing in a conscious way. And in the summer of 2017, I decided I needed a fresh start. I needed a fresh start, new environment, just kick things off brand new. And I was going to do a very drastic thing in terms of, not so, well, yeah, it was a little life-altering, I guess. I was going to move from Connecticut all the way to California, move my furniture business from Connecticut all the way to California, and set up shop over there. And honestly, just try to do everything I could to forget about everything and just lose myself in the environment. And this was the plan. But in the fall of 2017, when I was scouting for places to live in out west, when I was headed in that direction, delivering furniture along the way, I came across the Grand Canyon going through Arizona. And this set off a series of events that effectuated a spiritual awakening, a reawakening. And when I came back to Connecticut on December 4th of 2017, God put these answers before me. The answer to everything. The answer to the things that would unfold today, and the things that we're dealing with, the things that have been kept from you. So I'm at the 2-hour mark. And I think I'm going to close this video here. And I'll see you guys soon.